Hi and welcome to another edition of Joe the Water Pro. I'm Joe Letourneau, your host, and today I have a very special guest, Dr. Laurel Schaider from Silent Spring Institute of Newton, Massachusetts. Dr. Schaider is a senior staff scientist at Silent Spring Institute and is responsible for Cape Cod's groundwater and drinking water research. Prior to joining Silent Spring, she worked as a research associate at the Harvard School of Public Health in the Center for Children's Environmental Health project at Tar Creek Superfund site in Oklahoma. Dr. Schaider earned her PhD in environmental engineering at the University of California, Berkeley. She has also taught ecology and environmental engineering courses at MIT and Northeastern University. So I appreciate her coming on board and talking to you about the water issues and research that she has done, and we'll talk more about that. So I present to you Dr. Schaider.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Tell me a little bit about what you do at the Silent Spring Institute, and I know you've done a lot of the research and the projects testing the water down here in the Cape, so tell us about that.
Sure. So my background, as you mentioned, is in environmental engineering and environmental chemistry, and I'm interested in how pollutants move around in the environment. And so here on the Cape, there are concerns about water quality. You know, everyone on the Cape relies on the groundwater aquifer as their source of drinking water,
right.
And nearly everyone has a septic system. About 85% of homes and businesses have a septic system. So there are pollutants that can leach out of septic systems and make their way into the groundwater, and there are concerns about those chemicals making their way into ponds and into drinking water supplies.
Right. I know one of the research projects you did was, I think back in 2006, we had tested 6 area ponds down the Cape, and I know that one of the things you found some estrogenic compounds, pharmaceutical hormones. And one of the things I found particularly interesting was some of the estrogen was turning some of the male fish female. Tell us a little bit more about that project.
Right, so we tested 6 ponds throughout the Cape. 3 of them were located down gradient of more densely populated areas, and 3 were in less densely populated areas. And the amount of population density is a proxy for how many septic systems there might be. And so we tested for the presence of estrogens and pharmaceuticals in the waters. We didn't actually do any testing of fish, but the levels of, we did find some hormones and some pharmaceuticals, and in particular ponds that were down gradient of more densely populated areas tended to have higher levels of these chemicals and more frequent detections. And the levels of a couple of the hormones that we found did approach levels that in other studies have been shown to have an effect on fish, for instance, feminizing male fish. To our knowledge, no one studied the fish on Cape Cod for any signs of feminization, but that is an area in the future where we'd like to do more research.
So I know you mentioned 85% of the Cape has septic tanks.
Right.
A lot of these things, obviously, when people take prescription drugs, they flush them down the toilet when they're done with them. A lot of that stuff ends up into the septic, and I know that if people aren't pumping them frequently, or there's loose sandy soil around here, that it can get right back into the groundwater. I know there was a study done at the Colorado School of Mines that said up to 90% of oral drugs pass through the body unchanged. So I mean, a lot of these things wind up into the groundwater.
I think that's a great point. I know a lot of communities on the Cape are considering pharmaceutical take-back programs, so for unused or expired medications to collect them and make sure that they don't get flushed. But I think you raise an important point that the majority of drugs that get into wastewater come from people taking them as prescribed, and that our bodies don't fully absorb them. And so it's important to have good stewardship of how you use medications that you're not using, but to keep in mind that there will still be pharmaceuticals in the wastewater.
I also want to mention with Silent Spring Institute in Newton, it's a tribute to Rachel Carson, whose landmark book, Silent Spring, launched the modern environment movement. Rachel Carson died of breast cancer 2 years after the book was published. But the Silent Spring Institute is committed to breast cancer prevention. It's a unique partnership of scientists, physicians, public health advocates, and community activists to identify and break the links between the environment and women's health issues especially breast cancer. And for more information, before I forget, you can visit on the internet, silentspring.org.
Our initial large study of breast cancer in the environment included over 2,000 women living here on the Cape. So
Okay.
about half of them had breast cancer and half didn't. And we conducted an in-depth survey with questions about where the women had lived, lifestyle, pregnancy history, to try to figure out what might be different between these two groups of women. Because as you say, in the early 90s, it became clear that rates of breast cancer on Cape Cod are higher than in
Right.
other parts of Massachusetts. And so from this study, we found that factors such as age or in-migration or use of mammography did not account for those differences. We did find that the longer that a woman had lived on the Cape, the higher her risk of breast cancer. So it does suggest potentially some local and hopefully preventable source or risk factor for breast cancer.
Okay. Any other testing that you're working on now as far as new research, new studies?
Right. So as you mentioned, the public well testing that we had done in May, we released the results of a study where we tested 20 public drinking water supply wells throughout Cape Cod.
Okay.
9 water districts participated in our study, and we were really grateful for them to be a part of our study. We tested for pharmaceuticals, hormones, and some chemicals associated with household and personal care products. So some fragrances, some flame retardants, some perfluorinated chemicals. These are found in non-stick and stain-resistant products. And so we did find the presence of these chemicals in some of the wells that we tested. So of the 20 public supply wells we tested, 15 had at least one of these chemicals. Yeah. And it's not surprising that we found some of these. These same types of chemicals have been found in water supplies throughout the country. A lot of them are called emerging contaminants because we have new analytical techniques that allow us to measure them at these low parts per trillion levels, where maybe they've been there all along, but now we're able to measure them.
Right.
And we did find that wells that were located in areas with more residential development and wells that had higher levels of nitrate tended to have more of these types of chemicals.
You guys recommend a carbon filter on your website. That's something I'm a big proponent of. To me, take matters into your own hands. If you have well water, like you say, test your well water. Test for every year, bacteria, nitrates. There's a potability test that's out there. There's some good stuff. You can actually get into volatile organics and to spend a little extra, but you can get a good synopsis of what's in your well water.
And the county lab will do that testing.
The county lab will do it as well. So, and then you're on town water. They test it for you, and you can get an idea of what's going on with the chlorine levels and trihallomethanes and that type of thing. So, to me, it's and even the President's Anti-Cancer Panel recommends a water filtration system, a home system, as a final barrier for a lot of these pollutants and emerging contaminants and chemicals, pharmaceuticals and whatnot. I know reverse osmosis is one of the top-of-the-line systems that are out there, and I always suggest people invest in a good drinking system, at least reverse osmosis or a good carbon block if money was an issue. But you can have a separate faucet at your sink. You can tee into your ice maker. Plus, you can also get into whole house systems, a whole house carbon, to help reduce exposure to chemicals. And lately, there was a lot of bacteria in the Cape. Boil order alerts, E. coli, in 5 towns. You had Falmouth, Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, and just recently Barnstable. So it's the Cape water woes seem to drag on, in new areas with the E. coli, and a lot of people get inconvenienced with boiling their water and buying bottled water. And to me, the simple solution on the bacteria side is an ultraviolet light. Somebody could put that in the whole house. You can do under-the-counter type systems, and this high-intensity light will zap the water, and that will kill E. coli, bacteria, viruses, mold spores. It's really it's a great method, a proven method of treating the water for bacteria and viruses. The website to go on and check out for more information is silentspring.org, and a whole host of information, tips and everything else, and a lot of these research and studies, everything is on there. If any questions for me, feel free to email me at thewaterpro@comcast.net. And as always, it's been a pleasure bringing you the latest information to give you the tips and tools that you need to make better decisions. I'm Joe Laterney. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And as always, remember this: the purer your water, the better your life. I'll see you next time.